call me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive. Let's get lost tonight. Lord, who's on my right?
Hello, wackos. Welcome to Without a Country. I am Corinne Fisher, your host. I am a comedian, podcaster, and a former New York City mayoral candidate 2025. If you're just joining us for the very first time, welcome. All political views are welcome here. I myself am left-leaning, full transparency, but I am not someone who's like, I'm right, you're wrong. I mean, maybe I am, but not in a political sense. Maybe in other sense, like Spice Girls trivia or something of that nature. Anyway, welcome to the show. Today is June 17th, and we are the New York Knicks NBA World Champions. The show is live from New York. So exciting. What a crazy week it's been. I do feel like the New York Knicks have taken up my entire life. It's getting to the point where like it's kind of like Halloween for me, where I nixed so hard that I actually like physically needed to stop because it's overtaking my life. Like I am going to the parade tomorrow. I have to get up at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning to get a spot in this parade. Because it's like this much space and a million people are going to want to go to this parade. Apparently, there's talk that it might be the most well-attended parade in New York City history, which is wild. But it's lovely, and I think it's really nice to see the city coming together over, who would have thought it, like sports. Like New York is funny because in some ways it's very much a sports city, but there's so many like types of people who not only like know nothing about sports, they don't care about sports, they're almost like the antithesis of sports. And so this has been very interesting to see, like, you know, Basquiat types rooting for the Knicks, and I really love it. But yeah, I just gotta be honest, I knew what was happening this year. Like I just felt it in my bones, and I knew specifically. I walked into Radio City Music Hall with such confidence on what day? That was on Saturday. And I, rebought tickets that the city so nicely sold to everyone for $10. I rebought them for I think it was like $275 a piece, which is like, most of these tickets have been non-transferable. For these discounted government rates, or like they're not even discounted, like that's just the price they are for everyone, the accessible rate. But of course, for Radio City Music Hall, I guess because it's like a privately owned venue, those ones were transferable. And so, of course, people who didn't want to go bought them up and then resold them to dumbass New Yorkers like myself. But I just needed knew I needed a special place to watch it, and I didn't trust any of the bar watch parties that I saw, which also weren't cheap. I mean, they were cheaper than $250 a person, or $275 a person with fees. But it was Radio City Music Hall. They did such a lovely job. Everyone was so invested. The TVs were great. Everyone was focused. It felt like an iconic place to be. I also wanted to be in Midtown because me and every other New Yorker, of course, had this dream that we were all going to parade together to Madison Square Garden after the Knicks took the victory. And then the fucking stupid cops who, I mean, just really no, who else in the entire world could ruin the vibe of the Knicks winning besides the cops? I literally, and they will cover it in a second, but they managed to ruin the Knicks winning from coast to coast somehow, because of course they had to shoot a fucking dog in a Knicks t-shirt. Anyway, the Knicks the cops, of course, were out in riot gear to stop us from going to Madison Square Garden, and some would argue caused a more unsafe situation by blockading us all in instead of just letting the streets be free and letting us do what we were going to do. But it was so cool to be out. Hilarious, all the footage that was on Fox News or whatever about like bedlam in the streets. I humorously referred to it as bedlam, but it was certainly like chaotic, but it was not, there. I was in Times Square. I know someone did get shot. I wasn't there when they got shot. Like someone got shot like in the foot. It was definitely crowded, and people were, the most dangerous thing in my opinion was people were setting off fireworks in very like densely populated areas, which I am very like, I have an aversion to fireworks, because in many states you can legally set them off yourself, but I grew up in a place where you couldn't legally set off fireworks. So anytime my family members, and by this I mean like married and family members, no one in my household, were like setting them off, I was always told like someone's gonna lose a finger. So I obviously have a little bit of a problem with fireworks, but like unsafe to do in like Bryant Park, in the streets near Bryant Park. If you know New York City, it's just too cramped. There's not enough space. Someone's going to lose a finger or get their hair caught on fire. And I was running away from the fireworks. Like nothing bothered me. I was getting in crowds. I was jumping with like influencers. I was like throwing my body in amongst grown men. That didn't bother me at all. But once they started doing the fireworks, I was like running. And I wasn't the only one. Plenty of other New Yorkers, like born and raised New Yorkers, were running too because they knew this wasn't a good idea. But besides that, honestly, it was totally fine. It was joyous. I live downtown, and like Lower East Side was bumping until 4 or 5 in the morning. The streets were filled. Everyone was having a great time. The line for Katz's Deli, because Katz's Deli is open 24 hours on like Saturday night. And, insider tip from me to you as someone who lives near Katz's Deli is that if you want to go to Katz's Deli, you don't need to wait in a line. You just go at a really off time and like eat it in your hotel room. Like I always laugh at the people who are spending hours of their New York trip waiting in line at like lunchtime at Katz's. Like it's such a waste. It's a waste of your vacation. Just go at like midnight. That being said, I knew it was a crazy night because the line at Katz's, at no joke, it was like 3 or 4 in the morning on Saturday going into Sunday, was as far out as it is at lunchtime. And I'm tracking that nonstop because I walk by it like usually once or twice a day, that line. And so I was like, wow, the city's bumping when the Katz's line at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. is still like down the block. So everyone was celebrating. It was just such a great win. And I am so happy for the New York Knicks. I love this team. I love the coach, Mike Brown. And I really, really couldn't be happier. They seem like a really, nice group of men. And I feel so old. They're a nice group of men. It's so weird rooting for a team when like everyone is, 10 to 15 years younger than you on it. And they've achieved so much. Possibly, Saturday night, possibly some of those guys achieved the biggest thing they're ever going to achieve in their lives. And that is its own form of depression, but we don't need to get into that now. We don't need to get into it now. Just very exciting. And I know you guys have spent years listening to me talk about the New York Knicks, and it's nice to finally take it all. And I think it means a lot more for the city than, just winning the NBA finals. Quick housekeeping, as I've been talking about, Los Angeles Gash coming to the Comedy Store on Sunday, October 25th. Make sure as soon as I put that ticket link up to get those tickets. Right now, it's just to save the date the way you do for a wedding. Probably by the end of the month, I will get that up though. And we can start selling those tickets, even though it's, it seems like it's a long way out. That's going to be here sooner than you know it. It's almost time for Summerween, which means right after Summerween comes Halloween. And Mike also had a very interesting weekend. You attended the cage match. Was it multiple or one at the White House?
I was at UFC Freedom 250. Corinne.
Okay, sorry. Yes, of course.
This is the our fearless leader's birthday party. So
Right.
I
And the
want to make sure
250th birthday of America. But
that's in a couple of weeks.
I know. Well, obviously, Donald Trump, if you couldn't tell from everything he's done, is a Gemini. So
Well, no, it's like somebody was pointing out, like, there's two different America 250 celebrations. One is being done by like the American people, and
uh-huh.
that's the one where it was like it was supposed to be a big concert that everybody pulled out of. That instead he's just going to do a rally at. The one
Mhm.
where the White House was like spending the time, money, and energy on was Freedom 250, which although it was America's 250th birthday, it was done on a Sunday because it was Trump's birthday.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there's never UFC. I don't think is they've done one Sunday card in like their entire history before.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I've watched many UFC matches being a friend of many male comedians. So male comedians and male just like comedy adjacent folks love UFC. They're very intertwined. So I've spent a lot of time watching UFC and I don't remember it ever being on a Sunday.
Listen, I don't think it's necessarily comedy people. I think it's it's just young men in general. I think most men under the age of like 40 have, they've grown up now with this sport from its infancy. And it's like at one point or another, one of these fighters is going to speak to you, and it's like you're just going to get dragged,
Oh,
sucked
speak to
into
you like emotionally.
yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Like so I did attend. I went to the Fan Fest on Friday, which included like the weigh-ins. And it was a very good time. They ended it with a Zach Brown concert. We said screw that and hung out in the Bud Light tent watching
Of course you did.
watching the Knicks game, which they then turned off on us. It's a 2 minute and 46-second
So wait, on
mark.
Saturday? Because the next game
On
was Saturday.
Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went down for Fan Fest on Saturday, stayed there for the Knicks game, drove through the streets of DC, high-fiving people in Knicks jerseys out and about. It was a great time. Fan Fest on Sunday, a lot of questions about like, yo, where were you for the Knicks win last night?
Oh, I love
Like,
that.
dude, when I tell you, at one point it was very hot. The sun was out. There was not very many shaded accommodations. There was almost no seating provided to the 80. You know what I mean? Like if we're doing bread and circus, right? It
Right.
kind of helps to have the Coliseum.
Right.
Like having a place where no one can sit down is kind of a bummer.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's, speaks to everything this administration has done. It's not for the people.
Truly. But I will say, yeah, a lot of Knicks love. I was sitting down at one point, just like found a shaded area, and I was Alfred is bored with Mike's story. All right, Wilson.
No, he can't hear.
I was scrolling through my phone on Reels, just openly weeping, just crying my eyes out at all of the like Knicks celebrations, the revelry. There was like a little animation that happened where it was like a young man, it was like a boy in a Patrick Ewing jersey, and it follows him all the way through his life to like he's wearing a Brunson jersey and his whole family's an OG and Hart, and oh man, it really got me. And then then the cage fights kicked off. There was Zach Brown came out. It was a very Zach Brown heavy weekend. He came out and sang the anthem. They had an F-16 flyover. At one point, they had the Golden Gliders, like dudes jump out of planes, and then one guy wrapped around the Washington Monument in a parachute, which is pretty badass. Yeah, he did like a full corkscrew around the Washington Monument. The fights themselves were incredible. I think the Marine Corps band 100% stole the show. Did you watch any of it?
No, I watched like before the fight started. I watched like a little bit of like the pre-interviews and stuff, but my weekend had been completely consumed by sports already. And so by like 6 p.m. I had to start like doing work. Otherwise, I would have done no work the whole weekend and I would have been very upset with myself.
Fair enough.
I even woke up on Sunday and I'm like, it still was about the Knicks because I was waiting in a line for a free burrito that they were giving out because of the Knicks. Cause like I wouldn't have done it, but I was with someone who wanted a free burrito. And I was like, well, if I'm waiting with you, I'm going to get one too. It was a whole thing.
Did you get a copy of the New York Post or the New York?
No. And I'm so
Daily
mad.
News? Me too.
No, I didn't. And because that's the thing when on Sunday night, I was like, oh my God, I was literally up until 5 a.m. I could have gone to the store and gotten it as soon as it hit the presses. But I already checked on eBay and I think we can get them for like $15 a piece. So we should get them now probably. But I already had this whole thought process. And then they're doing some weird like Knicks specific newsstand downtown where they're like printing special edition things. But of course they're sold. Like, I just don't have the time. I don't have the time. I don't know how everyone has the time. Like my trainer was like, I went to MSG to try and get the bedazzled shirt. I actually got the bedazzled shirt. I was refreshing night of. And so I think it should be on its way to my home as long as everything, fingers crossed is going as it should. But I mean, it is a fight to get all the merch. This is bringing me back to the Spice Girls days when I had to like claw people's eyes out in the aisles of Toys R Us to get the Spice Girls dolls.
I feel that. I've never,
which I didn't do because that's not what the Spice Girls are about.
Only claw boys out, boys eyes out. No, me and the one I've always been jealous of is Danny Polchuk's Toronto Raptors championship hat. Like I've always wanted a Knicks version of that. So I think I'm gonna go to the parade tomorrow. I'm gonna try to grab maybe a hat. And I think that's going to be the hat and the New York Post cover of the 2 pieces of memorabilia I think I really want.
Yeah. Well, I was in Harlem today and I knew that they would have a lot of people on the streets selling like really cool, unofficial merch because the unofficial merch has become this whole other fashion statement in New York during these Knicks championships. And I was really underwhelmed. Like no one was getting creative, but I did see a guy walking with this incredible, if anyone knows where to get one, Captain Clutch, Jalen Brunson in the style of a Captain Crunch ad shirt. And it was so amazing. And so then I was like, spending time walking around looking for that. But I just saw like very basic ones. The coolest one I did see one with the OG Anunoby tip in, but I've seen that a lot. Like you can get that on Depop. So I might get that because that was such a moment. Because like for me, game 4, like as exciting as the win was, I was just like very calm walking into game 5. I just knew we were taking it. But so to me, like game 4 was the one where like I lost it. Like my reaction to them winning like game 4 was bigger than game 5, I would say. My adrenaline rush.
Yeah, I mean, we saw literally the greatest basketball game. I mean, certainly the greatest game in over a decade.
Yeah.
Arguably, like it's on the short list for greatest games of all time. Greatest Knicks game of all time. Not even like that beats Willis is going to take the court, like the whole 9. Like that is now the number 1 Knicks game of all time. And that is the one where I think Jalen Brunson kind of cemented himself as like, this guy's now is certainly within like when they do that, like 80 for 80. I don't know if you've ever seen that where they do like 50 years of the NBA top 50 players. Jalen's going to be getting that invite for the rest of his life now. You just can't not get that invite. So like this team is always going to be represented from the historic standpoint, which is very nice. And game 4 really cemented that.
Yeah, it was such a cool game. And I was just glad to be amongst my New Yorkers at good old Planet Hollywood. Everyone was making fun of me when I said I went to Planet Hollywood, but it was an awesome place to watch the game. I was like, you got to trust me on that. You can't go like too cool New Yorkie because too many people will be there. And I was like, Planet Hollywood's huge. It's in Times Square. I think it's actually a great choice. And it was. So
brilliant.
I was very happy. Plus, I love the food at Planet Hollywood. Not ironically, I enjoy Planet Hollywood. I hadn't been to the new one since they reopened it in like the new location. It was great. Last time, years and years ago, when I was at Planet Hollywood, I was dining there, and guess who else was? And he wasn't there for an event. He was just having lunch there. John Cena. If it's good enough for John Cena, it's good enough for me. It was fantastic. All right, so. Thank you for the report. Let's get right in.
Real quick.
Yes.
No, I was in the middle of just giving them praise. The Marine Corps brass band, I was hating. I was like, yo, why do we have a rock band? Like, why do we had an army rock band was doing like rock covers for a while. I'm like, this is super lame. And then out of nowhere, those entrances happened, and I could not have switched my tune up more. The greatest cover, I mean, Johnny Depp Wishes, dude. No, sorry, Johnny Cash Wishes.
I was like, Johnny Depp. I mean, Johnny Depp does play music, but I don't think I'm really familiar with it.
So I got it mixed up because they did a cover of the song from Desperado, the one that I think it's either I think it's Antonio Banderas sings it with like the whole mariachi band in the Robert Rodriguez classic, and like everyone is saying they did a like bone chillingly better job. And then Justin Gaethje's walkout from the Oval Office to Johnny Cash's Ain't No Grave. Again, better than I'm going to say better than the Johnny Cash version of that song.
Wow, he just rolled over in his grave.
I mean, yo, he would not be mad at that. If he saw what they put on at the White House, he wouldn't be mad at that. There was a ton of protesters, and I found the new culture war.
What's the new culture war?
The new culture war is the Harley-Davidson is for like the people of the rainbow, and the based right-wing Americans are about Indian motorcycles. And you're going to see a lot more arguing about that, because I did notice that the people who were showing up for the protest had the big LGBTQ flag, and they were driving the Harley-Davidson in.
Interesting.
And the new head of PR or propaganda, whatever you want to call it, at Indian went out and threw a boatload of money at Sean Strickland, who was a UFC fighter he's the current middleweight champion of the world. He's very quote unquote outspoken and based and like very Nick Fuentes coded, like saying things you can't say on the internet, but he did just take a big paycheck, I'm assuming, to talk about how Indian is super based and right wing, and that's the motorcycle of like true Americans, and the lefty commies are driving Harleys.
Well, yeah, I'm reading about it now. Apparently, there was like a Indian Motorcycles did a specific like attack ad campaign against Harley to make it look like not cool. So if you go to YouTube, it's something like, it says, it has Indian Motorcycles stepped over the line. And I don't want to play this whole thing on here, but I don't know. It's from an account called Living Off the Slab. But yeah, it says like there's been a whole thing.
I'm just saying, like, I've never seen Harley-Davidson associated with the LGBTQ movement until this weekend, where they had protesters. There was like a line of protesters on the other side of the street from us. And there was two people in like, full like rainbow attire rocking the Harley-Davidson. And I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're really just going to start fighting over motorcycle brands now? Like, that's what the elites want us to do? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it says this is from motorcycle.news. Since late May 2026, several prominent, predominantly right-leaning accounts have been targeting Harley-Davidson while praising Indian Motorcycle in the same post. MMA fighter Sean Strickland reportedly started the trend by publicly declaring he was switching from Harley to Indian. He had already announced a similar farewell from Harley back in 2024, but reportedly kept his motorcycle. And let's see. Indian is celebrating its 125th anniversary this year and is built in the USA. Some posts also use derogatory and homophobic language against Harley. Apparently, they're saying that like Harley also things that corporate does are like too woke, and that's why they're that's part of what they're doing about this. There is some
do you know any people who are like, yeah, I'm a big Harley person? Like, I'm a leather daddy, but I also ride a Harley.
No, but actually, okay. So actually my hairdresser, my hairstylist, she is a big motorcycle girly, and she has a Harley, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, there is. And like a lot of times you'll see videos with like these, Harley Davidson types, like saving the day. and it will always be like the Harley types and doing something like very gay friendly or anti-racist, that kind of thing. So yes, like, well, in my real life, no, but I also don't know a lot of people in my real life who drive any sort of vehicle because I live in New York City.
All right,
So I just don't know a lot of people who have any type of transportation that they own. But yeah, no, my hairstylist, she absolutely is. She's like a big into motorcycles. And she could not be more leftist for sure. All right, cool. Well, that's interesting. All eyes on that as a new social, war, a new way to polarize people who are riding motorcycles. Let's get right into the enemy of the state now. Our enemy of the state this week is, of course, the cop who shot Jameson the Doodle. This is, I really was trying to avoid any news that was sad regarding the Knicks championship because I was like, I just need one thing to be good. This one was unavoidable, though. So for those of you who don't know, there was a woman in Los Angeles. She is a nurse, and she was celebrating the Knicks win. I guess originally from New York, in her apartment complex, and it was one of those apartments. They don't really exist in New York City, but they are pretty common in LA, where they're kind of like a motel, like where all the doors are outside. It was that kind of a complex in Los Angeles. And I guess her celebratory screams must have seemed like screams of duress to a neighbor. So the neighbor called the cops to do some sort of a wellness check or just to make sure she was okay, because it sounded like she was screaming. Obviously, they're not sports fans. And when she opened the door, I guess the dog ran out, and the cops claimed the dog was charging at them, and then they shot and killed this dog. And I mean, this is so over. First of all, this dog looks like, I don't know if you guys have ever watched like Fraggle Rock, but the dog, the big fluffy like Muppet dog that lives upstairs from Fraggle Rock, that's what this dog looked like. It couldn't be like, it has like that sweet human face. Everyone knows like these big shaggy dogs are nothing but lovable. Like not at all, like not that it's okay to shoot other dogs, but like not any of these quote unquote scary breeds, not a pit bull, not a German shepherd, like just like a big, fraggly, goofy, big dog wearing a literal Knicks t-shirt. Where if you see a dog in a t-shirt, that dog is not meant to attack you. But trigger happy cops as always. And I think this is like this is a conversation that's not had a lot. We've had it on this show. I think when it had to do with Breonna Taylor and no-knock warrants, I believe is when we got into this kind of hidden number that's not publicly discussed a lot and not even publicly released, I don't think. But like there are conversations that the cops are killing upwards of 10,000 dogs per year in incidents like this. That number, I cannot confirm that number, but there have been conversations about it. But again, it's like not a released number. And so there's a lot of studies, investigations, articles on like how many animals, pet animals are the cops killing per year in incidents like this. And of course, I knew that this was going to turn into like a talking point, in the mayor's race, and that, Nithya and Karen would then use this poor deceased dog as a way to get more votes heading towards the general election in November. And again, like, this is the part of politics that disgusts me because, like, yes, I genuinely, running for mayor or not, I'm invested in this story. But when you're running for mayor, you have to kind of post a picture of the dog and be like, this is unjust. And it's like, it just feels so performative when this poor fucking woman just lost her beloved dog. Like, just crazy. They did end up, people ended up raising a lot of money for her, like well over $100,000. But of course, like, if you lose your dog, it doesn't, I don't care if you wanted to give me $5 million. That's not worth losing. No amount of money is worth losing my dog. Dogs are family members. But New York Post had this article that came out just like hour and a half ago that said LA Mayor Karen Bass orders probe into beloved dog shot by cops during Knicks party. This is by Zane Khan. And they have the LAPD has not released the name of the cop who shot the dog yet. So that's why the enemy of the state just has to be cop who shot Jameson, because I don't know exactly who that person is yet. But they better enter the witness protection program. Okay. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass ordered a full investigation into the fatal police shooting of a beloved family dog by officers responding to a distress call just minutes after its owners celebrated the New York Knicks NBA championship victory. Every life lost to violence is a tragedy, and we know that the devastating loss of Jameson will be felt by his family forever, Bass told the California Post in a statement Tuesday. I have spoken directly to the chief to ensure a full investigation and accountability for any wrongdoing. And I don't know if you guys saw the video. Like, I didn't see any video because the body cam footage has not been released of the dog actually being shot. But I saw a video of the moments right after where the dog's owner, I believe her name is Marie, was just hysterical. Like, I don't even know why this was out there, but I mean, just, hysterical over the body of Jameson, like shaking him. And there was no joke. I'm not even being over the top here. There was no joke, 15 LAPD police officers just standing there. And if there was a soundtrack to go with their looks, the looks on their faces, it would be, they were just they just knew they fucked up. All the neighbors are sticking their, mascot says people who fear for their lives that easily shouldn't be cops. Yes, I agree. And that's a conversation we have every time something like this happens. There was another incident that happened right after Jameson was shot about cops killed a 1-year-old a boy when they were trying to pursue someone who had stolen something from a store. Again, just anytime someone's stealing something, no one should be getting shot over stealing low value items or any items. I mean, I feel this way about stealing cars too. There used to be pretty frequently, the cops would chase down, and I think I've talked about this on the show before, this very busy road near me called Route 22 in Jersey. And it's kind of how you get anywhere that you need to be when you're coming from my town or neighboring towns. And so, we'd be on there often, going shopping, getting dinner, going to the mall, whatever it was. And I remember multiple instances in my childhood where my mom had to pull over very quickly or get out of the way because there was a high speed chase on Route 22. And it was always for a stolen car. It's not like we're chasing, for murderers here. And it was endangering so many other lives. And I hear it, I know we can't just let people steal cars. And of course, if that's your car, you want to get it back. But if my car is stolen, no, I actually don't want it back if it means 15 people are going to get in a car accident and maybe die. There just needs to be a better way to handle something, things like this. But of course, capitalism is king. And cash is king in the United States. But yeah, no, cops are trigger happy because they're not properly trained. They're skittish. I mean, I'm sure your adrenaline is pumping. But again, the amount of animals, again, there's a lot of kind of studies on this, conversations about this that I looked into, dove a little deeper. It's just so crazy what's going on. And the video was heartbreaking. And then, as she's laying over her dog's dead body, shaking it, no one's helping her. No one's even attempting to do CPR on the dog. I guess it was just they knew it was dead. Maybe I'm guessing it was a direct shot. And, then this one officer goes over to the woman, the owner, and he's like, I'm sorry for your loss. And then says something, but basically we need to clear this area. And it's fuck you. Literally, fuck you. I am so sick of people who at their job can't use a little common sense and a little fucking empathy. It's you just shot her dog. Maybe we can wait 2 extra minutes past. Obviously, you didn't care about protocol when you shot her dog. So maybe we don't need to rush into protocol for clearing the area in this moment. Can we have cops are in society to supposedly serve and protect? Can you serve this woman for a moment after you just ruined her fucking life? It I mean, just the cops every day continue to astound me. And I'm sure there are cops who have done good things, and, please, share your stories with me. But it's so hard not to fucking hate cops. And I've felt like this since I was a little kid. This is not some kind of like new woke stance that I've taken, because they've continuously, in my personal life, to me directly, to friends, to loved ones, have fucked everything the fuck up. And when I needed them, in times when I needed them, and I reached out to them, like when I was getting, death threats, they still didn't fucking do anything. So fuck. Please, without a country podcast at gmail.com, if you have a good cop story. And I know that there are cops who listen to both GWF and Without a Country. And like, obviously, like, I'm sure that you might have done good stuff, but man, you have a lot of shitty fucking colleagues, and it's really, really difficult to not get angry all the time about this. Back to the article, the mayor said she would closely monitor the probe into the shooting, which has sparked outrage across Los Angeles and fueled a massive fundraising effort for the dog's grieving owners. See, Alfred knows that we're talking about dogs, and he's deeply affected by this story. I will make sure that the investigation is thorough and transparent so that Angelenos have a complete understanding of what happened to Jameson and this family, Bass added. She, in her head, she's like, I better handle this well so I can win this election. Jameson, a 2-year-old mix of golden retriever, Saint Bernard, and poodle, belonged to diehard Knicks fan Marie Marcel and her family. The curly-haired pup had been celebrating the team's championship win Saturday night at Marcel's Canoga Park apartment, and was even photographed wearing a blue Knicks shirt shortly before he was killed. The celebration turned tragic when officers from the LAPD's Topanga Patrol Division responded to reports of a screaming woman inside the apartment complex shortly after 8 p.m. And, I would love to know who called. This is why, like, there have been instances where I'm like, maybe it would be helpful to call the cops. And like, I honestly always talk myself out of it, because I'm like, I just feel like at this point, they're going to make things worse. And I would like, again, I told a story a couple years ago when an Asian guy literally just drove his pickup. This guy should not have a license, but he just fully drove his pickup truck into a rental car that I had when I was on the road in Texas. I forget, maybe we were driving between like Dallas and Austin or something. We're driving between 2 Texas cities, and just one of the worst driving. They just merged straight into our car, and I was like, I'm not like calling the cops on this guy. Like, I'm not calling the cops in Texas, like for a guy, a non-white person. Like, I'm just not doing it. And it's not like, oh, look at me, I'm so woke. It's just like, you can't. It endangers people. It's not worth it. I don't want this guy getting fucking shot because he, merged into my car. They're not taking his license away in that moment anyway. So I could tell the guy was a really bad driver. Because we saw his paperwork and we saw how much he was paying monthly. It was like $800 or $900 a month. And we're like, you must be a fucking terrible driver. So your insurance company will take care of this. And at a certain point, maybe you will get priced out of it. Oh no, it's not Jeremiah. It's definitely Jameson. But yeah, no, it is. It's very terrible. It is so bad. All right. So according to the police, Jameson was with his owner when his officers asked her to secure the large dog. Authorities said Marcel briefly shut the apartment door before reopening it, allowing Jameson to exit. And, again, let's not victim blame here, but just a heads up, if the cops come to your door and you do have an animal, whether it be a cat or a dog, anything that's outside of a cage, put that thing in the bathroom and close the door. And let the police know that they're there. And also, like, sometimes every now and then, like in a 911 call, I feel like I've heard them ask, like, is the door open? Like, do you have any like animals in the home? But like, if you have to call the cops for any reason, like in the 911 thing, you should like make sure to state that you have an animal. Definitely try to secure the animal. Like, if you don't have a crate, usually bathroom is the safest place for a dog, as long as you don't have like any kind of chemicals open. And I don't know, my dog eats trash, so I always just like put the trash on the toilet so he can't get to it. But secure that dog, because cops are shooting dogs all the time. Let's see. Officers allege the dog then charged toward one of them, prompting an officer to open fire. I mean, playfully, it's a doodle. Cell phone video captured the chaotic aftermath as Marcel screamed in disbelief. Oh my God, oh my God. She cried, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. The shooting has triggered a wave of sympathy online and in the neighborhood, where a memorial of flowers and tributes has begun growing outside the family's apartment. A GoFundMe campaign launched in Jameson's memory had raised more than $170,000 as of Wednesday morning, far exceeding its original $10,000 goal. And they just did it for like cremation and everything. Dog cremation actually kind of expensive. On June 13th, 2026, 10 minutes after celebrating the Knicks championship win, our dog was fatally shot right outside our home, the family wrote on the fundraiser. Jameson was 2 years old and he was taken from us too soon. Anyone who's met Jameson would tell you he's the sweetest boy in the world. The family said the donation would help cover cremation and support their push for justice for Jameson. Yeah, exactly. Pay for lawyers to sue the shit out of the LAPD. And I looked into it, and people actually, this has been happening so much that people have been getting, and don't be trying to get your dog shot because of this if you're in financial trouble, you nutcases. But people have been getting really good payments from police departments when their animals have been killed. So this is, again, something that's happening. And even cops aren't stupid enough to think that people are going to get that they're going to get away with killing a dog. Unfortunately, I feel like there's sometimes less public outcry about a human being being killed than a dog, but they know they're not getting away with this. The LAPD said the shooting remains under investigation. Anti-police activists rushed to condemn the shooting. I'll read that in a second, Mike. Demanding that the department immediately release body camera footage and identify the officers involved. She was celebrating the win. A neighbor made a noise complaint. They sent 14 cops to respond. What the fuck? See, no, that was initially the information that was spreading that it was a noise complaint that was called in. And so that was there was crazy backlash about that, but that's not what officially happened. It wasn't a noise complaint. They were doing a welfare check because someone called in I hear a woman in distress. That was the official call. But yes, there is information going around online that it was a noise complaint, in which case it would be crazy for this many officers to show up. But no, that's not the official call that was made in. It was a distress call. So then, it makes sense that more police officers showed up. I think there was even a helicopter. It was I don't know. It was crazy. But poorly handled.
14 cops for a wellness check.
Wellness check
also seems high.
A woman under distress. Wellness check is not the right language. That's some people were calling it. Wellness check is really if you think someone has killed themselves. Right, it was a woman in distress screaming. They thought her celebratory screams were screams of distress. And in my head, I'm thinking I guess this person's never met a black woman before, but because in your head, you're sounds like something a white person would do, the call. But I know you guys are going to get all frantic about that. We don't know whose race was what. Okay. But anyway, that's what went down. All right. So moving on to the Patreon real quick. This is all hail to our amazing dictator, Christopher Fungi. Thank you so much for supporting the show week in, week out. We love you. We appreciate you. Shout out to my capitalist pigs and my cuties. If you guys want one extra video news story every single week, you're going to head over to patreon.com/withoutatcountry. And you can get additional news story every week. And you can also help support the show for as little as $6 a month. It's so helpful and it really makes a difference. And I appreciate you guys endlessly, but I appreciate everyone, obviously, who tunes into the show every week. Let's get into the wacko mailbag before we move on to everything else. If you want to send me an email, it's withoutatcountrypodcast@gmail.com. And so Mike and I got in a heated discussion last week about the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf murder case. Austin Metcalf being the one slain, Karmelo Anthony being the one who stabbed him. And I asked for, I think, a little bit of information maybe from someone in law about why the case was presented as it was. And so our amazing law student who listens every week, Margarita, did write in a really in-depth description of kind of what I was asking for. She had also gone over the Patagonia case for us. She says, "Hi, Corinne. Firstly, thank you for the shout out in last week's episode regarding the trademark law comment I left. Secondly, I felt honored that you mentioned that I could chime in regarding your question pertaining to the Karmelo Anthony verdict." And okay, and it's a little bit more. So she was like, "I wanted to email you, not leave a YouTube comment." And so first it says first degree versus second degree murder in general. First degree murder is usually reserved for premeditated and deliberate killings and other particularly heinous types of murder. Second degree murder usually includes intentional and extremely reckless killings. We go over this a lot, but just to refresh, because when you see the conversation online, people are constantly kind of getting this wrong and confusing things. She specifically then looked at Texas law where this case takes place. She says, in Texas, a person commits first-degree murder if he intentionally or knowingly causes the death of an individual, 2, intends to cause serious bodily injury and commits an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes death of an individual, or 3, attempts to commit an act clearly dangerous to human life that causes the death of an individual. And so that, as you can see, like that state by state law, this is like a little bit different than the overall thing. And in Texas, now reading this, you're like, okay, well, I guess this does seem like it's first degree murder, right? If a defendant proves he caused the death under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause by a preponderance of evidence, the offense is second degree murder. Okay, well then I'm like back to second degree murder, right? Sudden passion is a passion directly caused by and arising out of provocation by the individual killed or another acting with the person killed. This passion must occur at the time of the offense and not from a former provocation. Meanwhile, a person commits manslaughter if he recklessly causes the death of an individual. A person acts recklessly or is reckless when he is aware of but consciously disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that these circumstances exist or the result will occur. The risk an ordinary person would exercise under all the circumstances as viewed from the actor's standpoint. Basically, like you knew someone could die, but you did it anyway. That's her too long didn't read, but I read the whole thing because this interests me. And so her analysis of the trial is, at trial, Karmelo's attorney tried to argue that Karmelo had the right to defend himself. A defendant has the right to use deadly force if he is not the initial aggressor, is confronted with immediate unlawful force, and reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent death or serious bodily harm. Here, it's hard to say who was the initial aggressor, but there is no doubt that there was no immediate unlawful force based on what we know, i.e., that Austin Metcalf physically pushed Karmelo. While past experience of the defendant is relevant, i.e., what Corinne talked about regarding Karmelo's upbringing, the reasonableness, which is interesting because it's like that's what we're talking when we talk about like character in a trial. Like you can really talk about stuff like this. Like this is a person who has these experience, therefore will react in this way, or this is someone who acts in this way all the time and they've done that since childhood, et cetera, et cetera. The reasonableness argument is still very weak since there are so many other factors going against Karmelo. You would need a jury of people who are very understanding and empathetic of Karmelo's situation, which I would think is generally difficult for a Black teenager in Texas, regardless of the situation. Obviously, bias here, but there is like bias in a trial when you're representing. I think like you can almost think of like prosecution and defense as two documentary film crews, right? Or maybe documentary film producers and directors, right? And so while a documentary is presenting the truth, a documentary is still presenting most times a truth where they want you to, at the end of the documentary, believe a certain thing. Like they're like, I'm going to take this 90 minutes and basically use it as a trial where at the end of this documentary, I want you to believe this. That's like the documentaries that most of the time that we love are ones like that. Of course, documentaries do exist that try to be like unbiased, but those tend to be the ones that we're not like addicted to. Like kind of the very commercially watchable Michael Moore style of documentary is picking a side and then spending the next 90 minutes to back up that point of view that they want to prove. And that's how I think of prosecution and defense. It's like, yeah, many things were true, but I am only going to present to you the things that are true that back up what I want you to believe at the end of this trial. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to understand. So in summary, putting all this together, Karmelo's lawyer presented a losing argument. He based his entire argument on self-defense, but unfortunately, it was very clear from the get-go that this argument would be very weak. He had a better chance arguing manslaughter, but likely the reason he didn't is to try to get Karmelo acquitted altogether. Which is like, if you stabbed someone, they died, and a bunch of people saw, I would have just told Karmelo, babe, it's not going to go that way. You know, arguing manslaughter would have yielded less jail time, but a guilty verdict. To play devil's advocate, sometimes lawyers' hands are tied regarding their argument. If Karmelo and his family refused to allow the lawyer to argue anything but self-defense, right, meaning like that they were like, we're paying you to try and get Karmelo acquitted. The lawyer had no choice but to present that argument, even if he knew that they would lose and that Karmelo would end up in jail for longer. Side note, the crazy part is that if the lawyer went against the wishes of his client, he would actually get disciplined and perhaps disbarred. So he actually couldn't present a different argument at court, even if he knew there was a better outcome for his client. You do what the client wants as long as it's not illegal. So that's, very interesting. I think sometimes we forget that, while lawyers are, we hope people in pursuit of justice and the truth, they are also, paid workers who are slaves to capitalism like the rest of us, She says, I hope this was helpful. Thank you always for you, Mike, and everyone for such a wonderful, high quality show. I look forward to it every week. This was so helpful. Thank you so much, Margarita. I'm so glad you listened to the show because honestly, there's so many times when I'm like, I would love a lawyer to like listen to what I'm saying to make sure that this is correct. Or I would love for a lawyer, lawyer or someone pursuing their law degree to, kind of help me understand this a little bit more. So that was awesome. Then we have another email from Wacko Aubrey. I had asked about door knocking in Los Angeles last week. She said, just wanted to send a quick email response to your question about the mayoral race in Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles and not one person from any of the campaigns knocked on my door or left any leaflets in my neighborhood. That's crazy. That's crazy, especially with the money that the Karen Bass and Spencer Pratt campaigns had. That being said, I wonder if even though Spencer Pratt was running independent, I'm guessing that you're probably ready. I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm guessing you're probably a registered Democrat, or if you're not registered as anything, it makes sense that no one knocked on your door. If you're a registered Democrat, I would say it would also make sense that at least Spencer Pratt's team didn't knock on your door, because even though he was running as an independent, I know he was definitely concentrating on getting votes from Republicans in that jungle primary. And when you're running for office, I'm guessing this is something that would work the same in New York, but you can buy lists of people who have voted Democrat or Republican. You get the voter rolls and then you can purchase them, and then you just know to send your team to only people who have voted, Democrat in the past, because it's very hard to get someone to flip unless you have some super unique, platform or campaign. And then it's also even harder to get someone out to vote who has no history of voting in the past. So unless you have unlimited funds, you're usually not going to waste leaflets or door knockers, both of which are expensive. Unless you have a massive volunteer team, then door knocking isn't expensive. You know, like if you have like 30,000 volunteers the way Zohran had here who are unpaid, then you have the chance to door knock a lot. And leaflets, you know, even though it's a piece of paper, I think are so much more costly than people no, right? And so that's why I get so many political leaflets. You know, just know that the person spent a lot of campaign money on that. So, you know, maybe just take a look at some of the things, you know, before you toss it in the garbage. I feel like that's why they're getting like brighter, bolder, a couple of words, just because they know, like, as you're bringing it into the trash, hopefully maybe you'll take a look at the front and the back, especially those color ones on like heavy cardstock. Just know that costs a lot of money for them to get printed. It said, however, during the last mayoral election, I did get a door knock from members of Karen Bass's campaign, which did play a factor in voting for her initially. Interesting. I also agree in the power of door-to-door campaigning and was shocked no one came to our neighborhood this year, especially with the incumbent's position on the line after her handling of the wildfires. That is really interesting. And I would love to talk to someone from Karen Bass's team to, you know, see what her field looked like, unless maybe she's just assumed that she would at least get through to the general and is going to save all her heavy door knocking money for this general election. But, you know, that was still a bit of a risk. Interesting. All right. And then the last wacko mailbag is also this interesting article from the Economist. And I was able to find my way into it. I opened an account, but I didn't have to put my credit card in. I think I found my way in. Because it's getting harder and harder to bypass these paywalls for things that we don't have subscriptions to, which is a lot of things. And this is from, well, I know your name, but you didn't sign your name, so I'm not going to say your name, but just let's say Wacko C. And it's about Gen Z socialism, right? And so it says, hi, Corinne, big fan. Thought this was an interesting article in The Economist this week that captured the current political zeitgeist. The description that Gen Z socialism is, quote, a form of retail politics that appeals not to the notions of common good, as in prior waves of socialism, but to people's narrow self-interests, felt like a hot take, as I would think that the cost of living is the common good. It does not feel like my wage has gone up as part of inflation like this article suggests. I'm a 30-year-old urban designer in Australia. Yeah, and I mean, that's a problem in America too, that costs of living are going up, but our wages aren't going up to meet them. That's like the problem, you know? In my youth, I remember going to many climate change protests and bin diving with my housemates. That's like dumpster diving here, just if you guys don't know. Now I have 2 young kids and order things off Amazon. I thought this was a personal shift, and I was just a busy gal with limited disposable income. But maybe as a collective, we all do care less about the environment and spend more time worrying about the evil billion and now trillionaires. It seems like we're close to a political truth in there. And so I wanted to share this article because I do think it's very interesting, especially we're talking a lot about socialism. You know, for me, you know, being involved in municipal politics here in New York City, you know, Zohran's been walking around with a lot of people that he's endorsing who are part of the DSA. And, you know, we're going to really see after these primaries, and early voting has already started, if these political chess moves he's making are going to work, you know, because they are. Again, I'm going to double down on this. Endorsements are political chess moves. It's not just, oh, I think this is the best person and I want you guys to have the best representatives and vote. Like, it can be part that, but it's also a political chess move. And if these people don't win, it's going to hurt him a lot, right? Like, so he endorsed 3 people. He endorsed Claire Valdez. he endorsed, I forgot this, her Nikhil, I forgot her name, but this second person, and then he endorsed Brad Lander, who is running for Congress in my district against Dan Goldman. Pretty sure Brad Lander is going to win in my district, and we'll see for the other ones. I have to check polling on what's going on there, but like they've been everywhere with him, and I just think it's I think it's a little weird. I think it's a little weird, and it's a little bit like taking off. Like, it's like, okay, you're the mayor of New York City. You're not like, we're not like just crowning, next in line, especially with the way that Chiosei was treated when he tried to run against Hakeem Jeffries here. Again, we're getting a little bit in the weeds, but I just think it's very interesting. And like, listen, we love Zohran, but please, if anyone says that he had anything to do with the Knicks win, I'm going to blow a gasket. Enough is enough. Okay.
Well,
so what?
I mean, the man becomes mayor. All of a sudden, Arsenal breaks a 22-year streak in soccer. Now 53 years for the Knicks.
This is actually disrespectful to the Knicks. It's actually disrespectful.
All I'm saying, if the Jets come out of nowhere and win a Super Bowl, we have to start taking Mayor Mamdani seriously as a sports
I do
influencer.
take him seriously, but he's not a sports influencer.
As the man who determines who's winning the chip. If New York becomes title city under Mayor Mamdani, I'm willing to.
Well, then it's rigged. Then it's an inside job.
Let's just call it Mamdani-stan. I'm fine with that.
Oh my goodness. All right. So this is from The Economist, how to fight back against Gen Z socialism. The me first doctrine is a threat to prosperity. And remember, I'm reading this. I'm not saying that I believe this. I am sharing this article because someone sent it in. And I think they were just saying it's interesting too. Like, it's food for thought. Who is this by too? It says who the illustration is by, but who the frick is the article by? Someone who left their name off? Okay, whatever. Something new is stirring on the left. A fresh crop of socialists want to remake the economy with price controls, hefty wealth taxes, and a spree of nationalizations, supercharged by fury over Gaza. They are winning voters at a formidable pace. Many rose to prominence only recently, like Zach Polanski, who leads the Green Party in Britain, or Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York. Others are longstanding political fixtures. The septuagenarian Jean-Luc Mélenchon is on his fourth swing at the French presidency, but thumping support from the 20-somethings of Generation Z has put the LSA back in his sights again. Call it Gen Z socialism, not because all its adherents are young or because it is new for young people to lean leftward, but because it is the brand of leftism made for the TikTok era that today's young revolutionaries support. And listen, whether or not I ultimately, whatever my thoughts ultimately on this are going to be, because this is my first time reading it with you, because I just got this, I just hate when an article that maybe might be able to make some good points starts off like so cunty and demeaning, because it's like, now even if I want to agree with you, it makes me hard when you're like, what are these TikTokers doing? Like, it's just like crusty sounding. It's just like present your evidence, and like, you don't have to, like, just TikTok is just a part of your life if you're young. Like, it's just a part of your life. It's not like a lesser than, forget weighty collectivist ideals or seizing the means of production. Gen Z socialism is a me first doctrine. Climate change and race, preoccupations of the 2010s and early 2020s, are now much more peripheral concerns. So are social issues barring Gaza. Angst about inflation, housing, and artificial intelligence have replaced all that with something cruder. This country is awash in wealth, says Avi Lewis, freshly elected leader of the New Democratic Party in Canada. A country where productivity has been all but flat for a decade. We can have nice things. Saying that prices should be capped to keep your bills down while someone else pays for your public services is a seductive, shareable message. Plenty of the grievances that animate Gen Z socialists do stem from real issues. Inflation has been too high. Rent in big cities is now often unaffordable, and AI could upend the labor market. Dismissing these worries would be foolish. Yet Gen Z socialism is wrong about how to fix the problems of capitalism. It must be resisted because it is a profound threat to prosperity. No country's Gen Z socialists are quite alike. The realities of power have forced some, like Mr. Mamdani, to become more moderate. But they broadly agree on three core principles. First, that growth does little to help ordinary people. There is a zero sum mindset where a better outcome comes not from creating, but from taking, as they fear AI barons will soon do on a vast scale. Second, that spending can be paid for by the richest. Once the left wanted higher taxes for everyone, Gen Z socialists demand handouts funded by billionaires. The third tenet is a remarkable hostility to private enterprise. Gen Z socialists are uninterested in letting the market rip and redistributing the proceeds. They would have chunks of everyday life, from housing to groceries, governed by state diktat. Politics has always had zany fringes. The far right is no less barmy and more dangerous. But what is so worrying about the Gen Z socialists is how deeply their ideas are bleeding into the center left. Desperate to compete, even mainstream Democrats in America now propose mad schemes like exempting over half of tax filers from federal income tax. In Britain, the Labour Party, having won power on a centrist platform, has been spoked by the Greens and is rekindling its zeal for higher taxes and state control. Increasingly, the ideas of the Gen Z socialists can win even when their candidates lose. That is bad news. Rent controls would worsen housing shortages by crushing the incentive to build. The profit margins of big supermarket chains, demonized by Gen Z socialists, are already wafer thin after years of ruthless competition, a miracle of modern capitalism. Wealth taxes would become confiscatory and deter innovation. Do not assume that the failure of these policies, if implemented, would bring about an automatic course correction. Europe has struggled for decades to escape the low growth funk left by its own overregulation. The rise of status Pyrrhonists in Argentina helps explain its century of relative decline. Resisting Gen Z socialism is therefore an urgent task. The first step is for free market liberals to stop apologizing. A series of popular criticisms of capitalism, each containing a grain of truth, has in aggregate obscured the fundamental wisdom that private enterprise is at the root of human prosperity. Yes, people aren't always rational, as behavioral economics shows. True, inequality matters and growth is better when broad-based. Free trade and globalization create losers as well as winners. But this is the best time in human history to be born, given record real incomes, high life expectancy, and low rates of extreme poverty. A punchier defense of capitalism would work better in the social media age than hand-wringing by uncharismatic centrists like Sir Keir Starmer. Centrist governments must also solve the problems driving popular discontent. Abundance liberals are right to want to build cheap and plentiful housing and infrastructure. Politicians must stop saddling the young with the burden of funding excessive pensions. The tax system must ensure that meritocracy prevails over inheritocracy. Broader-based inheritance taxes and levies on property would help. The hardest challenge will be the disruption caused by advances in AI. The Gen Z leftists have set out their stall with calls for a moratorium on data centers and government jobs guarantee. Liberals must be more positive and imaginative in their own prescriptions, using a mixture of taxes, distributed capital ownership, and support for workers to make sure that the upsides of labor market disruption are widely shared. The world is ruled by little else. Populists have the wind in their sails. It can sometimes seem as though market liberalism is doomed to political failure. The Economist disagrees. A robust defense of the ideas that have brought unprecedented riches has barely been tried. Many of the problems that animate Gen Z socialists, like high rents, are the result of markets that are insufficiently free, not excessively so. There is time yet for liberalism to once again produce results and to win the argument. Again, who is this by? So obviously this also, just to point out, is not an American news source. Wait, I have to check. Is it Australian or British based on the person who sent it to me is Australian, but the spelling could be either or. So I just want to see, like, where is this from? Because the URL isn't telling me. Do you know where this is based?
British.
British? Yeah, okay. Yeah, registered in England and Wales. Okay, it says it all the way at the bottom. It's this specific like office is registered out of London. Okay, that's what I was thinking, but based on the spelling. And so number one, interesting, because as I like to say time and time again, these are not conversations that are just happening in America. America is not the only country that is at odds with itself. It is not the only country who some people are saying, let's move rightward. Some people are moving leftward. They're having similar problems, and socialism is just something in general that young people around the world are getting interested in, because it's not just us who is in New York City being like, let's try out something new. But I just thought, like, for this article is very interesting because it seems like this person, whoever the frick wrote it, who didn't want to put their name on it, they really felt like, we just have patience, or, don't try something new, because that's definitely not going to work, you stupid, silly little kids. It's like, well, it's not like something didn't work for a short amount of time and then everyone was like, try something new. Like, something didn't work out like for kind of like the larger part of an entire generation, being my generation, millennials. Like, I guess Gen X is involved too, I will say. But there was like a long, it's been a long time of things getting more expensive, quality getting worse, wages not getting higher. Like, this has been tracked for decades and decades. Full generations of people who are not able to buy houses, people having less children, in part because things are changing socially, but also in part because they can't afford to have children. People thinking like, why should I even, get married? All these kinds of things are definitely happening. And I think this person is really just like, doesn't want young people to be right about anything. It's, you guys know me. I'm not like, oh, I love everything about socialism. I think they all have great ideas, and, plenty of things about Gen Z and their politics, or the left politics, irritates me, but that's just like normal. You have views when you are young, and then your life changes, and then maybe your views change, or maybe they don't. I don't know. Mike, what were your thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, I do think the idea that the market's being overly governed, overly restrictive, overly clamped down upon is certainly, like you had to make a plan for New York City. So you've seen behind the curtain. Like, would you agree that regulation is driving rents up or keeping them down?
Well, regulation as far as housing and businesses, certainly I would argue is a problem. And as in that, like that book that everyone likes to fight about, like the abundance book or whatever, that was very popular for like a hot second that everyone was talking about. This is a problem in left leaning cities at large, that yes, too much regulation, too much red tape for starting a small business, especially for small businesses, or for housing, makes things go slower, and that red states or red cities don't have the same problem. So yes, there is an overregulation problem on the left there for sure.
So I mean, like the
markets, I can speak less to, because I'm just like not involved, and like market rates and stuff like that is not really like what you're dealing with, like for a municipal issue. That's more of a national issue,
right? But I'm talking about markets in the sense of like
the housing market. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you government regulation clamping down on what this market can and what this market can't do is I mean, I would agree that, anytime you add the state into something and keep giving the state more and more power, the state does not return that power to the people. And the state eventually takes
Right.
it from being the carrot and turns it into the stick and uses it against you. I mean, like, a lot. China is a beautiful place to live in theory, but
Right. And so your pushback on socialism is that we're then trusting the government to divvy everything up evenly. It is not the it's not the notion in and of itself of divvying up things evenly amongst people. Is that
no,
correct?
of course. It's like the
Right.
the if the worker did, seize the means of production and all that, like the general concept of it makes a ton of sense. Why should there be one person at the top making all the money off of the sweat equity of that many people? But it's
Sure.
like, when you don't have one person who is singularly focused on growing this company and expanding and doing different things, like you do start to see the value in a someone who is motivated to grow a company. I mean, the example of Dana White, right? Like this is somebody who bought a company for $2 million, sold it for 4.2, and then within 7 years it's valued at 11 something $billion. And it's like, yeah, did he exploit a ton of people in doing that? Of course.
Well,
But
same with Amazon, same
right.
same goes. It's kind of the same story, right? It's like it's like the American dream and the American nightmare in one in many ways, because it's like Jeff Bezos is truly living in the American dream. He created this huge company that we all know the name of, that will have generation after generation of wealth for his family. But then we hear story, so many people work for Amazon, created so many jobs, but also how many of those people are peeing in a Poland Spring water bottle because they have a time crunch to get your wet comb to you.
Right, but on the flip side now, Jeff Bezos is closer to you and I in how much they're worth than Elon Musk is to Jeff Bezos, right?
That's a
So it's
fun
like,
fact I didn't know.
right. So it's like if you think about it, if you're not always looking for ruthless efficiency and growing, you are going to fall behind the curve. And that's the nature of capitalism. Once you fall behind, there's not enough room for Macy's and Gimbals. You know what I mean? Hell, there's not even
Sure.
enough room for Macy's right now.
Sure, and like by that line of thought, I do agree. If we kind of let the DSA take over the whole country, we might, in not that long of a time, America might not be the powerhouse we once were, right? So that's an interesting argument too. It's like what is more of a benefit to the people of America, remaining a world power, or trying something new to make individuals in the country more equal. And I know people might say immediately, like, making individuals in the country more equal, but not so easy to say as America, when you're a country that's pissed a lot of other countries off over the course of time. And, my thought is we kind of need to remain a world power, because otherwise there's going to be an awful long line of other countries who want to seek vengeance against us. I think that's also a thought.
You think, like, what
Yeah.
vengeance came swiftly down upon England after, they gave up the majority of the empire?
I mean, but do you think of England as like a weak country, or I don't know.
No, but I
They're
mean,
still in the conversation.
we're talking about this at one time was the sun never sets on the British Empire, right? Like this was a country that was, as imperialistic, if not more so than America has been over the last
Mhm.
80 years or so. Like, and it seems like they got away scot-free. Like, sure, they're not weak, but they're certainly not the world superpower that they were when they owned half of the world.
And yeah, and like they're not really like the target of it. I just think there is like this machismo to America, that like we just piss people off in a certain way. I don't know, just a thought, not like I'm not like banking on it or anything. Hi, cutie. All right. Well, very interesting article. Thank you for sending that in. Let's move on to our main stories. So first of all, I gave the main story of the week. The main story of the week, in my opinion, is the New York Knicks winning the NBA Finals. Like, I'm not even making that up. Yeah, Trump says we have peace with Iran now. How long will that last? It's not like a permanent peace treaty like some people are saying. So who the fuck really even knows what's going on? I feel like people kind of just stopped talking about it, and we're like, oh, I guess this is another one of Donald Trump's little wars that he'll stop soon. I don't even really know like what the plan. Do you think anything was achieved with that, Mike?
What, the war in Iran?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Now Iran can charge fees on the Strait of Hormuz, where it's not legal to charge a toll on that. We found that out. But they
Right.
can charge certain fees. No word yet on how those fees are going to work or anything like
And
that.
you think that was worth a war?
Oh God, no.
Okay. I was going to say. All right. Well, all right. This is from New York Magazine. There were many articles about the Knicks, but I thought this one maybe.
No, to be clear, there was no fees before we started the war.
Mm-hmm.
And as Love is a Battlefield pointed out,
the S&P 500 goes up 2% every time Trump announces peace. Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I guess I'm just have to take that face value.
That's why he always announces on like
'Cause
Saturdays and Sundays.
Oh, because I was like, I didn't fact check that, but that's a blind area for me.
It was also like a thing for a while. Just another market thing with Trump is he won't do anything until after the markets close on Friday. He makes his moves over the weekend so the market can't be affected, and then tries to claim peace by Sunday.
Well, I guess this is what happens when you elect an entrepreneur into the White House. All right. For New York Magazine, the sports section, this is by Joe D'Alessio, who has been covering sports for New York since 2006. New York fandom has never felt this good, and it may never feel like this again. All right. Well, got us excited and sad in the same sentence. 32 years ago today, I stood with 1.5 million of my closest friends in the Canyon of Heroes and screamed my 9-year-old lungs out in the direction of the 1994 Rangers, who days earlier had won the Stanley Cup for the first time in 54 years. Oh my God, I remember that. I do remember that. 1994. Wow. I wasn't at the Canyon of Heroes, but I was alive. That same night, I watched on TV as the Knicks, occasionally in split screen, defeated the Houston Rockets to take a 3-2 series lead in the NBA Finals. Life as a fourth grade sports fan was good. That spring is widely regarded as one of the greatest stretches in New York sports history, a time when the city was buzzing as two teams chased titles, taking turns in the spotlight on alternating nights. Even a child could understand that we were watching something special. But what we've just witnessed as a city has topped it. The Knicks' incredible title run, which unified the city like no sporting event before it, might just be the absolute peak of New York sports fandom. A perfect mix of circumstances that has heightened the joy of this moment and may be impossible to replicate ever again. And that's not the way I took the win. I took the win as like, this is never going to happen again. We might as enjoy it. We might as well enjoy it. I took it as, look, it took something extreme for us all to be united, but it is possible. And that moment like reminded me that like we're not as divided as we like to tell ourselves that we are. And like the story of being divided, I think, is like a more interesting story for people. It's a more interesting, story to write about, as we talk a lot about on this show. Having a black or white opinion is more clickable than having a gray opinion. But like we really can come together. It is possible. And this to me, especially, I think is interesting. The year of the midterms just reminded me of that. Like, did it take something that hasn't happened in 53 years happening to bring this joy? Sure, but it's possible. It's still there. We still have it within us, and so that's why this story to me is not just a New York story. It is a story that's applicable anywhere in the world. And I don't think that it has to take your sports team winning, but we need to work harder to find ways where this like Knicks win feeling can be spread amongst us, right? And I think like if we find ways that our government can actually serve us and give us the things we need, then that will be possible. All right. Over the past few weeks, New Yorkers have gathered to watch their Knicks, not just at the Garden, but from bars and parks and sidewalks and at least one Brooklyn funeral home. They did a really funny like funeral home one. Well, it was actually like sweet where you could watch in honor of someone that you've lost. We've high-fived strangers in Knicks gear and eaten blue and orange bagels and written Knicks-themed Billy Joel parodies. We've flushed our toilets as one when it was finally safe to step away from the TV. When Game 5 of the NBA Finals ended and the Knicks were finally crowned champions, New Yorkers spilled out into the streets to celebrate. There was cheering and crying and champagne and fireworks. All over the city, we sang and danced and hugged, turning New York into one enormous small town. One wondered if the party might just roll on until Thursday's parade, the first one the city has ever thrown for the franchise. New York's teams have combined for dozens of championships over the years, but this one was different from any of them. The city's connection to these Knicks has been more intense than anything we've ever seen. Much has been made of how the Knicks' unique place in the New York sports scene has led to an uncommonly united city and some truly immaculate vibes. But it's true. In a city of split allegiances, the Knicks are by far the more popular of our NBA teams, and they can command New York's attention in a way that no other team in the Big Four men's leagues can. The Mets and Yankees can't unite New Yorkers like this. Neither can the Jets or Giants. Though Super Bowl, what the hell number is that? XLLII came close.
57.
Yeah, I was like, you guys know I don't know Roman numerals.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. That is X before the L that's 42.
All right, so the Super Bowl 42 came close with Giants fans rooting for their team and Jets fans generally rooting against the 18-0 Patriots. There are 3 hockey teams in the metropolitan area with fan bases that despise the other 2. Leagues like the WNBA, NWSL, and MLS are growing in popularity. And while a local team in each has won a title in recent years, they don't yet capture the city's attention like an NBA team. New York teams have provided no shortage of legendary moments. There's David Tyree's helmet catch and Joe Namath's guarantee, legendary home runs by Aaron Boone, Bucky Dent, and Chris Chambliss, Bobby Thompson's shot heard round the world and Don Larson's perfect game, Stephon Matteau's double overtime winner, and Mookie Wilson's slow roller up first. But the city has never reacted to a moment with a collective freakout like it did when OG Anunoby's tip-in won Game 4 or when the final seconds ticked off the clock in the clinching Game 5. It's enough to make you a little bit jealous of cities like Philadelphia and Boston. Never, I love those 2 cities, but never, which experience this type of unified citywide rooting interest every season for each of their teams, but just a little bit jealous. And also I argue that no, like it can't be the same level because like part of what made this so special was it was such a long time coming and it is so notoriously frustrating and fist clenching to be a Knicks fan. It's like an inside joke amongst Knicks fans. It's like being a Knicks fan at times is like being in an abusive relationship, people would say. The Knicks' glory years in the early 70s came during a time when the NBA wasn't nearly as ubiquitous as it is today. When Willis Reed came out of the Madison Square Garden tunnel in Game 7 in 1970, most New Yorkers had to watch the game on a tape delay. No one was projecting games on the sides of buildings back then. All of which is to say, the city has been primed for decades to explode in the event of a Knicks championship. And what a championship it was. It's not just that the Knicks are great. It's that these particular Knicks are great and that they shed this much historical baggage. Everything lined up perfectly to deliver maximum excitement. The 2026 Knicks gave us one of the most dominant postseason runs of all time with just enough adversity to make it interesting, featuring a deeply likable roster fueled by the power of friendship. Knicks fans had been desperate for a title, and boy, have we earned this. My first memory as a Knicks fan came on June 2nd, 1993, when forward Charles Smith famously failed in his attempt to lay the ball in late in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Bulls. My second memory as a Knicks fan came a moment later when Smith failed in his second layup attempt. My third and fourth memories immediately followed, with Smith having the same result. The Knicks made me cry that night. I was hooked for life. Calling this a 53-year drought might undersell how much Knicks fans have suffered over that time. When the Knicks were good, something would always derail their season in a cruelly Knicksian way. John Starks' 2 for 18 game against the Rockets in 1994, or Reggie Miller's 8 points in 8.9 seconds in 1995, or Patrick Ewing's missed finger roll later in that same series. And when the Knicks were bad, they were so bad. They gave out inexcusable contracts and made bad trades. They cycled through coaches and executives, each seemingly with his own drama. They spent years maneuvering to sign a player who ultimately wanted to go elsewhere, and they made news off the court that could be far worse than anything they did on it. The Game 5 win on Saturday night was all the sweeter for the pain that came before it. If the Knicks repeat as champs next year, that would rule, obviously, but it wouldn't be the same. I'm not sure anything ever could be. One user on X commented that Game 4 of the finals was like the entire Knicks history condensed into one night, and he's correct. The wild turns, the heroes and villains, the pain and the joy and the subplots to the subplots, it was all right there. Josh Hart's missed layup could have been next in the long line of disastrous playoff moments. Instead, we got the single greatest shot in Knicks history. Game 4 somehow had a happy ending, and finally, so did a Knicks season. We got the moment of exultation, and that has been dangling in front of us for longer than I've been alive. And we got to share it with all of our neighbors, not just the ones who cheer for the same clothes we do. The Knicks, the New York Knicks, finally did it. It was all worth it. Next year finally came. And that's they always say, like, we're going to get them next year. So that's like what that is. Brought a damn tear to my eye. Loved it. Felt a little choked up reading that. But I just wanted like a little piece to commemorate it. Again, if you're not a New York Knicks fan, probably not as exciting. But I think the fandom was so extreme that even people in other places are like, something's going on here. It seems like New York is a fun place to be right now. All right, moving on to our other main story of the week. Luigi Mangione is he's gonna mount a psychiatric defense. Do not misconstrue this. This is not pleading insanity. This is a different thing. And I know some people are kind of going to try to like flip flop it and be like, oh, he's pleading insanity. No, it is a psychiatric defense. It's a different thing. And I have some articles on that to bring to your attention. I don't know. I went immediately when I saw this announced to the Mangionistas Instagram page to see what they had to say for themselves. Because I think it's an interesting approach. And they hadn't posted, I don't think, since May, but hopefully they'll post soon. I'm on the edge of my seat, Mangionistas. All right, this is from the Wall Street Journal. Mangione to mount psychiatric defense at trial for killing United Healthcare CEO. This is by Greta Reich and Corinne Ramey. Defense lawyers to argue at New York State court trial that 28-year-old was in state of extreme emotional disturbance. It's a long time of emotional disturbance, my guy. Luigi Mangione will mount a psychiatric defense at his New York State trial for the killing of United Healthcare Chief Executive Brian Thompson, a judge said Wednesday today. During a hearing in state court in Manhattan, Judge Gregory Caro said the lawyers discussed the defense strategy at a sealed proceeding earlier this month. The judge said defense lawyers intend to argue that Mangione killed the insurance executive due to an extreme emotional disturbance at the time. Mangione, wearing a dark blue suit, white button-up shirt, and handcuffs, sat silently at the defense table during the 20-minute hearing. The state trial of Mangione, 28 years old, is scheduled to begin on September 8th. Oh, God, buckle up. A psychiatric defense would significantly alter the nature of the trial because his lawyers would acknowledge he killed Thompson, but argue he did it because he was emotionally disturbed. All right. So, I mean, like, we have like video that he did it, but I know some people were being like, he's a plant. It wasn't him who did it. If a jury agrees with that argument, his murder charge would be downgraded to manslaughter, resulting in a shorter potential prison term. Mangione faces headwinds at trial, including a journal found in his backpack that prosecutors will likely use to argue that he planned the murder for months. Extreme emotional disturbance is about a loss of self-control for which there was a reasonable explanation or excuse, said Gary Galperin, a former prosecutor in Manhattan who now teaches at Cardozo School of Law. The classic case is you come home and find your spouse in bed with someone else. Yeah, of course, that's the classic one because men wrote that law and they were like, you know what? We shouldn't kill each other, except if your wife is fucking your neighbor, then we should be allowed to kill everyone. That's the only time you should be able to allow to kill people. Mangione.
Just wondering, what was Devil, as far as I understand, Devil Dan Sickles was the first use of temporary insanity when he shot the man who was having an affair with his wife on the steps of Congress. That man also happened to be Star Spangled Banner writer Francis Scott Key's son.
Oh, I'm actually not super familiar with that. I'm Googling this right now. It's also interesting though. Wait, what's his name? Devil Dan Daniels?
Sickles.
Okay. Was he himself in government?
Yes. He was, I believe, in the House of Representatives and shot a guy on the steps of Congress and got away with it.
And so that's so interesting that if the first time I'm gonna fact check this, but if you are right that the first time that temporary insanity was used was for someone who works for the government, I mean, I smell bullshit.
I don't know if he was at the time a congressman, but it was the first time the use of temporary insanity. So I'm wondering if that's not the same thing that he's going for.
Not temporary insanity. So Sickles, and we're talking about someone who was alive from 1819 to 1914, long life. So Sickles was involved in a number of scandals, most notably the 1859 homicide of his wife's lover, U.S. Attorney Philip Barton Key II. He was acquitted after using temporary insanity as a legal defense, the first time it was successfully used in United States history. So not the first time it was used, but the first time it was successfully used. And he, at the time, was he in? It seems like he is in office at this time in 1859. It looks like it's a little confusing. So he was in Congress at the time actively in 1859, and he was also censured by the New York State Assembly for escorting a known prostitute, Fanny White, into the Assembly's chambers. He also reportedly took her to England while leaving his pregnant wife at home. So this is
introduced her to the Queen of England as his primary political rival. It would be like Trump showing up to introducing Angela Merkel to Stormy Daniels and saying, "This is Hillary Clinton."
This is so crazy.
He's the GOAT.
What an interesting guy.
Stole every dollar that was supposed to go to his own Veterans Memorial Fund and embezzled the funds.
Oh my God.
He's the only Gettysburg general who does not have a monument there because he pocketed the cash.
Oh my God. Okay. So on February 27th, 1859 in Lafayette Square across the street from the White House, Sickles shot and killed Philip Barton Key II, the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia and the son, as you said, of Francis Scott Key. Sickles had discovered that Philip Key was having an affair with his wife, Teresa Bagioli Sickles. It's just so much crazier to know that he was also cheating on his wife, but it wasn't a problem when he was doing it. That's so wild. All right. Sickles surrendered at Attorney General Jeremiah Black's house a few blocks away on Franklin Square and confessed to the murder. After a visit to his home, accompanied by a constable, Sickles was taken to jail. He received numerous perquisites. It looks like it should be prerequisites, but it's not, including being allowed to retain his personal weapon and receive numerous visitors. So many visitors came that he was granted the use of the head jailer's apartment to receive them. They included many congressmen, senators, and other leading members of Washington society. Yeah, so he was like protected. President James Buchanan sent Sickles a personal note that said, what? I'm going to get you out of this. Harper's Magazine reported that the visits of his wife's mother and her clergyman were painful for Sickles. Both told him that Teresa was distracted with grief, shame, and sorrow, and that the loss of her wedding ring, which Sickles had taken on visiting his home, was more than Teresa could bear. Sickles was charged with murder. He secured several leading politicians as defense attorneys, among them Edwin Stanton, later to become Secretary of War, and Chief Counsel James T. Brady, who, like Sickles, was associated with Tammany Hall. Sickles pleaded temporary insanity, the first use of this defense in the United States. Okay, so maybe it is it's unclear because at first it said first successful use, and now it's saying first use, period, like you said. Before the jury, Stanton argued that Sickles had been driven insane by his wife's infidelity and thus was out of his mind when he shot Key. The papers soon trumpeted that Sickles was a hero for saving all the ladies of Washington from this rogue named Key. Sickles had obtained a graphic confession from Teresa. It was ruled inadmissible in court, but was leaked by him to the press and printed in newspapers in full. The defense strategy ensured that the trial was the main topic of conversation in Washington for weeks. This was like their Monica Lewinsky trial, and the extensive coverage, like old-timey this was the OG Monica Lewinsky trial, and the extensive coverage of national papers was sympathetic to Sickles. In the courtroom, the strategy brought drama, controversy, and ultimately an acquittal for Sickles. Sickles publicly forgave Teresa. Can you imagine? This guy murdered someone, but he publicly forgave Teresa and withdrew briefly from public life, although he did not resign from Congress. You know what? Congress back then, just like Congress right now. The public was apparently more outraged by Sickles' forgiveness and reconciliation with his wife than by the murder and his unorthodox acquittal. You know what? Wow. I'm so glad you shared this story. I was not aware of this. And when you click on temporary insanity, is there like a whole so when does it say it started? There's like a looks like there's traces of it maybe like in other places in 1953. So maybe it was being used in other countries called other things. But that's very interesting. Very interesting. The concept itself, though, defense by insanity, has existed apparently since ancient Greek and Roman times. And then there's something called the Monotone Rules of 1843. Very interesting. All right. Well, I love that. All right. Back to this article. But that was great. Thank you for bringing that up, Mike. So back to the the Wall Street Journal. Mangione faces a separate federal case. He has pleaded not guilty to those charges, and his federal trial is scheduled for early next year. Can you look what his federal charges are specifically, Mike? That psychiatric defense doesn't apply to that trial. Prosecutors say that Mangione shot Thompson, who was in New York for an investor conference, with a 3D printed ghost gun equipped with a silencer. I feel like it's hard to say like you had a psychiatric break when you had time to 3D print and put together a ghost gun with a silencer outside of
He's on trial for stalking that ended with stalking resulting in death, which carries a life sentence. So possible life sentence.
That's separate. Interesting. Okay. With a silencer outside of Midtown Manhattan Hotel in December 2024. He then fled on an e-bike, prosecutors said, kicking off a days-long manhunt that ended with Mangione's arrest at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. The state judge ruled last month that prosecutors could use a notebook and gun found in the backpack Mangione had with him at McDonald's. The notebook contains entries that prosecutors say show Mangione's motive. The investor conference is a true windfall, Mangione wrote. It embodies everything wrong with our health system. The next state court date is scheduled for August 11th. So that's kind of like the nuts and bolts of it. And then I also pulled, because I do from time to time really enjoy a New York Post article. I did pull a New York Post article on it. And surprise, surprise, they're being sassy. But let's see what they have to say for themselves over at the New York Post. It says how Luigi Mangione's head scratching. Oh my God, this ad. Defense could work in his favor, according to experts. And in true New York Post fashion, I have to get rid of this Yingling ad before I move on with it. And this is by Ben Kochman and Priscilla DeGregory. It's so crazy, it just might work. Luigi Mangione's plan to mount a head-scratching psych defense at his highly anticipated murder trial could actually work in his favor, legal experts said. It was revealed at a court hearing Wednesday today that Mangione's team plans to claim he was in the throes of an extreme emotional disturbance when he allegedly shot and killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in December 2024. If jurors buy the legal maneuver, I can't wait to see this jury. I can't wait to see pictures of this jury. What if it's just all 25-year-old white women? They could opt to convict him of manslaughter rather than murder, lowering the maximum penalty from life to 25 years behind bars. This is not a crazy defense. It is both the best defense Luigi has and sort of the perfect defense given his past statements, veteran Big Apple defense attorney Ron Kuby, our very own Ron Kuby, told the Post. Crucially, using a psych defense will allow Mangione...
Wait, who's Ron Kuby?
It's the guy who did the radio show, with Curtis Sliwa.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know Ron Kuby personally. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know Ron Kuby. Ron Kuby's been on Guys We Fucked. Ron Kuby's great. Crucially, using a psych defense will allow Mangione to introduce evidence either through his own testimony or through expert medical witnesses regarding his reasons for despising the U.S. private healthcare industry. This could show him in a sympathetic light to the jury while casting Thompson in a negative light, Kuby said. I mean, yeah, because this is trial by jury, it's going to be so interesting to see how the prosecution and defense argue this. Again, like who is on this jury? And man, they better pray they have obviously they can't be having people who are involved in the healthcare system on the jury. So, I don't just based on it being a jury trial, who is going to be sympathetic? I guess there are people who like me, who, even though I hate the American healthcare industry, are kind of like, yeah, you can't just go out and murder someone though. Let's see. Everything. But would my tune be different if it was a woman? I don't know. No, probably not. Everything that Luigi knew or believed about the healthcare system, all of his grievances, all of his bitterness, all of his history comes into evidence, Kuby told the Post. They need to understand Luigi's rage at the healthcare system and Brian Thompson's role in it. They don't need to agree with that rage, but they need to understand it. Kuby said the case will hinge on whether jurors believe there is a reasonable explanation for Mangione's loss of self-control and extreme emotional disturbance. Yeah, he was a young man. Another New York defense attorney and former prosecutor Seth Zuckerman agreed it's a plausible defense strategy. And again, I almost think the prosecution is going to have a tougher time here just because Luigi has already been tried in the court of public opinion and, people love him. So this is going to be very interesting. Mangione's team could try to use his potential damning manifesto, in which he muses about wanting to whack a healthcare boss to their advantage by claiming it shows just how emotionally disturbed he was. I don't think premeditation negates the possibility that someone is acting under an extreme emotional disturbance. The defense will say this if further evidence that he was extremely emotionally that the defense will say this is further evidence that he was extremely emotionally disturbed. The psych defense is clearly his best chance at avoiding spending the rest of his life in prison after Judge Gregory Caro handed prosecutors a key win by allowing them to use the notebook and alleged murder weapon found in his backpack, Zuckerman added. Like, I guess, couldn't they like say that these were like planted too? Isn't there an argument there? I don't know. Still, the psych defense means Mangione will need to essentially admit that he killed Thompson as part of his defense, Zuckerman said. It's almost as if he is admitting to the homicide and saying that there was a reason for the homicide, Zuckerman explained. But New York Law School professor Heather Kukalo didn't think a jury would buy the legal gambit, since the evidence appears to show the meticulous planning that went into the murder, and because jurors would be reluctant to consider evidence that might result in a lighter sentence. He had the materials, he had a plan, had to put everything together. All of that is going to cut against what I think jurors are generally going to believe, Kukalo said. When Mangione was arrested 5 days after the killing in Altoona, Pennsylvania, cops found a red journal, a gun, zip ties, and duct tape inside his backpack, prosecutors have said. The shooting was also captured on surveillance video, and investigators found Mangione's DNA on a cell phone, water bottle, and a piece of gum that the masked gunman could be seen tossing before he ran from the scene, prosecutors alleged. I think a jury is going to have a difficult time with this, she said. Mangione, 28, has pleaded not guilty in both the state and a separate federal case alleging he shot the 50-year-old healthcare honcho at close range on a sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan in broad daylight. Thompson was married with 2 sons. I thought they were separated, though, wasn't they? Because even his wife was like, Jesus, this was still a guy. I thought they were like separated. Judge Caro said Mangione's lawyers would need to further explain the details of the psych defense by Thursday as both sides prepare for the September 8th trial. Listen, I know this is going to be the hottest ticket in town, but I kind of want to go see this. If I'm going to be one of the Mangionistas. Going to wait outside. All right. So I think that was a very interesting, and that'll. We needed something after Knicks fever to bring the community together. And I guess it's going to be the Luigi Mangione trial here in New York City. All right, moving on to a little municipal piece that I thought was interesting. And again, while I cannot credit Zohran Mamdani with the Knicks championship win, I do want to give him his props for doing something really cool, which was speaking at the Rikers graduation. You guys know your girl loves some prison reform, some rehabilitation for inmates. And I thought this was really cool. This is from Spectrum One News, NewYork1.com. Mamdani speaks at Rikers Island High School graduation. Let's see. It's graduation season in the city, including on Rikers Island, where 57 students graduated from East River Academy Tuesday. Among their commencement speakers, Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Many of you arrived on Rikers in a cloud of uncertainty and despair, he said. The future felt very grim indeed, and yet you did not surrender to that alienation. You were not overcome by the adversity that lay before you. Instead, you chose to continue moving forward. You chose to pursue your education, to stick with it even on your lowest days. The school serves incarcerated people from ages 18 to 21, and they can earn GEDs or high school diplomas, which of course is going to be so important if and when they do get out, to have that. And, great use of your time. You can really concentrate on your studies when you're literally locked up. Elijah Smith said he took a chance on attending and it changed his outlook. As I started going to school, I felt liberated. I felt like I was making my own choices, a decision that wasn't decided by anybody in uniform, meaning the cops, or anybody else for that matter. he said in a speech to his fellow graduates. Even after he completed his studies 3 months ago, he kept returning to mentor other students and advocate for the city to start a PED tutoring program. So right there, like, it not only gave him, his GED, it gave him knowledge, it gave him a toolkit for when he gets out, and then it gave him purpose, because he was like, I know how good this made me feel. I can mentor other people, which is going to continue to make me feel good and feel like I have a purpose, and to also make other people feel good and then give them a purpose. And then it has this beautiful domino effect. And then he becomes an advocate. And, so many of the best advocates and activists that I meet in my advocacy and my activism are people who were down bad, quite frankly. They were down bad and they turned it the fuck around. A lot of times those are great, people who end up running for Congress or for a municipal office. And I just think when we talk about like diversity in government, like, yes, it's important to have diversity as far as like the color of your skin and your religion and your sex, your gender, but I think it's also extremely important to have diversity of life experiences, which is why I do not subscribe to people in politics needing to have experience in politics, because politics, in my opinion, is just like a made up thing. It's not anything. Politics is for anyone who has any kind of skill set that can be useful in politics. When you graduate, you're not supposed to keep going to the school floor, he told New York One. But I begged the captain, I begged her because I wanted to help people. I wanted people to graduate with me. School's chancellor, Kamar Samuels, said he was inspired to launch a new mentorship at East River Academy after meeting Smith last month. I asked myself, what can I do more? If he can do this, there's much more that I can do as a chancellor. And so that's why I'm excited to share today that I am launching a new leadership initiative to create more mentorship opportunities for East River Academy students, Samuel said. Like, I think like one of the best ways to stop recidivism is to make sure that not only are people on quote unquote good behavior while they're incarcerated, but that they have access to knowledge and they have access to purpose, and for a lot of people, I think, they end up, turning to the Bible or the Quran or some type of religion behind bars. And I think that gives them like a purpose and a will to live. And that's great. But I think that there should be other avenues besides that. And I think education is such a great avenue for that. Mamdani commended him as well. Elijah has become an inspiration for his fellow classmates, pushing both himself and his peers to strive for more. That made me feel so happy, Smith told New York One. I didn't honestly think he would be here, but it helped, Someone cares about the incarcerated individuals in this jail. Smith, who is incarcerated on charges of attempted robbery and assault, said he hopes to have the charges resolved soon and head home. He wants to become an EMT. Everybody here wants to change, so school is definitely a part of change. With your education, you could change a lot. You could change the world, you said. Graduates are accused of a wide variety of crimes and are awaiting trial or other resolutions to their cases. That includes the school's valedictorian, who faces attempted murder charges. He's a go-getter in all senses of it, after police said he pushed a man onto the subway tracks in Brooklyn. Jesus. He told the audience he was at Rikers Island because he let anger get the best of him, a real Luigi. But his achievement comes after learning to control emotions to take responsibility for his actions. Yeah, I just really loved this article. I thought it was great. And wow, the valedictorian murdered someone. Cool. There's hope for us all, guys. All right, moving on to, could be worse. This is Mike's top story of the week. I looked, I know you didn't specifically pull this article, but this has been something, this investigation has been going on for a while. So I wanted to try and find an article that had a pretty recent update. There was one article I liked a little bit more, but there was just absolutely no way for me to get into it, or I thought I would like a little bit more. I wasn't able to ultimately access it. But this is from Sky News. And this is, about some of these like grooming gangs that Mike has been talking about over the course of a couple months. I think you've mentioned it. First batch of grooming gangs.
It's been years.
It's been years?
I distinctly remember
On
talking
this
about
show?
this when we
Oh.
were in Studio A in Gas Digital still. So it's been a while.
Were we regularly recording there in Studio? Oh, Studio A. I was thinking
Yeah.
Studio B. All right. So, first batch of grooming gang cases returned to police to reinvestigate. The National Crime Agency says Operation Beaconport is the UK's most comprehensive and complex investigation into child sexual exploitation and abuse. Right? Again, it's happening everywhere, not just America. Not that makes us feel better or worse, but the first batch of grooming gang cases among a national review of previously closed files has been referred back to police forces where lines of inquiry may have been missed. Operation Beaconport is examining cases between January 2010 and March 2025 where there are 2 or more suspects accused of sexual abuse and they are still alive. There is a victim of a sexual offense with physical contact. Cases have not already been reviewed and no further action has been taken. In November, 1,273 such investigations from 23 police forces had already been referred to the National Crime Agency. 236 of which were prioritized because they involved allegations of rape. On Tuesday, the NCA said at this early stage, the reviews have identified closed cases from 8 force areas that may have viable lines of inquiry. The forces have been directed to reopen these cases to determine the next steps in relation to any reinvestigation. NCA Director General Graham Bigger said it was the first step towards seeking justice for victims and survivors. Operation Beaconport is the most comprehensive and complex investigation into child sexual exploitation and abuse in UK history, he said. The review of cases coincides with the 1-year mark of the publication of Baroness Casey's National Audit on Group-Based Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse. It made 12 recommendations, which the government has accepted. Reflecting on that audit on Tuesday, the Home Security described it as a landmark report exposing more than a decade of inaction in the face of these appalling crimes. Shabana Mahmood said victims and survivors were, time after time, let down by the very institutions responsible for keeping them safe, despite repeated warnings and longstanding recommendations for action. She added, I remain determined that we confront these failings directly and decisively. Ms. Mahmood also confirmed that an independent inquiry into grooming gangs, chaired by Baroness Anne Longfeld, will soon announce which local areas will face specific local investigations. The question of historical investigations into grooming gangs has also attracted the attention of Elon Musk, who accused Sir Keir Starmer of being complicit in the scandal. I'm sure a lot of people are complicit in the scandal, just like the Epstein files. The prime minister responded, accusing people of spreading.
Sure, but it would be like if the guy who let Jeffrey Epstein off with a slap in the wrist in Palm Beach then went on to become president. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, so Jeffrey Epstein's best friend is president.
I don't know about that.
They seem close.
They seem like they had many falling outs like rich creeps do.
But that's Donald Trump and everyone. I mean, the man probably has falling outs with his own wife every day.
Yeah, that's why he's on his 3rd or 4th.
Right. The prime minister responded accusing people of spreading lies. The Home Secretary also confirmed how the government was tackling cases where children who were victims of exploitation were treated as offenders and prosecuted. Convictions and cautions for loitering or soliciting for the purpose of prostitution would be disregarded, with records of offenses being deleted.
I'm wondering if there's any like looking into the charges brought about the family members who tried to help the women who were being, like if you're looking at overturning prostitution charges because you didn't want these good Sikh boys to get in trouble for, assaulting a woman, are they also going to look into the like dads who got in trouble for racism when they were trying to stop their daughter from being gang raped.
Oh, right. I remember.
You know what I
that.
mean? Because like
Yeah.
that exists too.
Sure. Acting Chief Constable Becky Riggs, the National Police Chiefs Council, NPCC, lead for child protection and abuse investigations, said in a statement, "We know that for many victims and survivors, the harm they experienced was compounded by not being listened to or believed." Oh, tale as old as time. That has had a lasting impact on trust and confidence. 1 year on from Baroness Casey's audit, our focus remains firmly on improving how we respond, ensuring victims and survivors are at the center of every decision we make. Restore Britain report. Meanwhile, the Rape Gang Inquiry, great name for an improv team, established and chaired by Restore Britain MP Rupert Lowe, published its full... What?
You never expect the Rape Gang Inquiry.
The Rape Gang Inquiry. I mean, that's also like it. That could have been the alt name for the Beastie Boys. Published it's I hate how catchy it is. It's not great. Published its full report on Tuesday. The executive summary said the study set out to examine what it called the systematic targeting of vulnerable girls, overwhelmingly white British, by predominantly Muslim Pakistani gangs in the UK. You know, there is a racial element to this, yes. Among the key recommendations to tackle group-based child sexual exploitation are better support for victims of grooming gangs, their parents, and child witnesses providing evidence.
This is beyond like a racial component to this. Like this is the like Tommy Robinson's backbone of his like, hey, we shouldn't have as many foreigners here. You know what I mean? Like it's less about like, oh, race plays a part in this, and more like the central conversation is on immigration and the streets of Britain being overrun, and this is something that they point to.
Okay, they can point to it, but like it is not common for immigrants to get together and create a rape gang. Like that's like they're acting like that's like an everyday thing. Like you did, Alfred. Oh my God. Sorry, Alfred decided to knock this whole thing down and then act like I was abusing him. Let's see.
They do be doing that.
Who? What?
Dogs.
Oh no! I was like, Alfred, you stepped through the cord and then yelped. Also, he wasn't hurt; he just was scared. All right. So, families placed at the center of safeguarding tougher sentences for perpetrators and their deportation if they are a foreign national. Of course, you know, immediate deportation if you're doing. If you're committing a felony. Dedicated national units for prosecuting cases and repatriating victims who are trafficked abroad. A national compensation scheme for survivors, legal reforms to improve child protection, restrict the activities of offenders, and prohibit Sharia marriages. I mean, I hope so. Criminal penalties for officials in certain circumstances who fail to act against suspects. And so, I mean, like,
I'm sure those are coming. I'm sure that definitely people in government are going to get in trouble for this. Like that's
sarcasm.
They always tack that on at the end of everything. Oh,
that's why it's at the end.
We're going to start, you know, actually reforming how government works in this country. Yeah, right.
Right. And so, and just like because grooming gang is not really like a used term that we like are familiar with here, but a grooming gang is a coordinated criminal network that manipulates and exploits vulnerable individuals, predominantly minors, for severe abuse. The term gained widespread prominence in the UK regarding organized networks of perpetrators who deliberately target, befriend, and coerce young people into sexual exploitation and trafficking. Yeah, because it's like sex trafficking, but they're calling it a grooming gang, because like grooming to me, like still bad, but grooming seems kind of like a tame word for what is happening here, which is fucking sex trafficking. Like a grooming gang, that just sounds like a group of gym teachers who are, you know, flirting with 12-year-olds in the hopes that when they're 18 they'll remember them, you know. Still not good, but All right. So peace in Iran. Let's go move on to girl and close out the show with a couple things here. I honestly don't even really want to spend too much time on Iran because it's like there's not like a lot to say on it. We kind of already discussed what's happening. It's crazy because sometimes these big world issues are all right, there's not a lot of conversation here, about it. But there was the G7 summit. So this is from The Guardian. U.S. releases text of Iran peace plan as Trump says deal averts worldwide depression. Details of 14-point agreement revealed as senior U.S. officials claim major win despite significant concessions to Tehran. And let's see what's going on here. All right. So Iran, the Trump administration has released the text of its 14-point agreement with Iran, claiming it delivered a major win for the United States, even as it made significant political and financial concessions to Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and prevent a worldwide depression. In extraordinary remarks on Wednesday, Donald Trump went from threatening Iran with a new wave of attacks to suggesting the country had basic rights to enrich uranium for civilian use. What a guy. That he would not pressure Tehran to abandon its ballistic missiles program, and the U.S. was going to have to give back billions of dollars in frozen Iranian assets. Those remarks, as well as the full text of the agreement, which was hailed by the Hezbollah chief Naim Qassam as a great victory, are likely to fuel anger in Israel and among hardliners in the Republican Party who had urged Trump not to make the deal with Tehran. Iran's chief negotiator, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, said the agreement is a record of U.S. failure. People will see it and judge. Defending the deal, Trump said no U.S. president had ever been as tough on Iran as him, and there is nothing as smart as the market, and the market loves it. Trump said that the alternative would be a worldwide depression, arguing that if he had not struck a deal, the Strait of Hormuz would never have been opened. They don't like floating billion-dollar ships up and down the strait when their rockets are flying overhead and there are mines all over the place. Senior administration officials said the deal would help prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, pointing to an agreement to discuss downblending its 440 kilogram stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which could be further enriched for use in a nuclear weapon. Trump has said that he was open to the stockpile being diluted inside Iran under the supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency. At a minimum, the enriched stockpile will be destroyed by downblending, said the senior administration official who read the text of the agreement. We will push for more than that, but the fact that they're conceding to it is a major, major win for the United States of America. Trump said the deal to end the months-long conflict, which has cost thousands of lives and devastated the world economy. Yeah, but who's paying attention, right? Jesus. Would formally be signed shortly. Iran had suggested that the deal could be signed by Trump and the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, in what would mark the highest level meeting between the two countries' leaders since the diplomatic break of the 1980s. Initially, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was expected to sign the deal at a ceremony in Geneva on Friday. The Trump administration had delayed the release of the full text of the Memorandum of Understanding, which is essentially a 60-day ceasefire agreement, in order to hold more comprehensive nuclear and permanent peace talks with Iran. The 14-point plan was dictated to journalists during a background briefing by senior administration officials as Trump spoke at the end of the G7. The deal would provide important financial incentives to Iran, including the immediate lifting of a U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports and the issuance of waivers for Iranian crude oil to be shipped abroad, as well as the potential lifting of all international sanctions against Iran, the unfreezing of billions of dollars in Iranian assets, and plans to develop a 300 BN reconstruction fund for Iran, funded by regional partners in the Gulf. Trump angrily rejected suggestions that the U.S. would be contributing to the 300 Wait, so is that's billion? Is BN billion? What is that? I thought, or is that Iranian currency? I should probably look this up. I was reading it as Iranian currency. Sorry, one second. I should make sure I'm not being dumb here. BN meaning money. Oh, it's billion. I didn't know that it was like that. I guess maybe it's like a British way to do billion. $300 billion fund, instead of saying payouts by Gulf states were likely to be conditional on Iran's good behavior. Anyone who wants to can invest. What do you expect me to say? No one is allowed to invest, but we're not investing. We're not putting up even 10 cents, he said. The ceasefire deal included Lebanon, a key Iranian demand, which would restrain Israel from conducting military operations in the country, according to a senior administration official. It also included a clause ensuring the territorial integrity of Lebanon, although an administration official, when asked, did not confirm that meant Israel would be forced to withdraw from the swath of the country it has occupied as a buffer zone against Hezbollah. In return, Iran would allow the toll-free passage of ships for 60 days through the Strait of Hormuz, would agree to restrain its foreign allies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, and reaffirms that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons, with plans to hold nuclear talks, including the downblending of its highly enriched uranium that is near weapons grade. Iran's official news agency released details of the deal planned to be signed on Friday, shortly after a U.S. official released a copy of the text. Details published by IRNA included U.S. commitments to grant Iran access to its frozen funds and end the blockade on its ships and ports, while Iran commits to facilitate the return of marine traffic in the Gulf and the Gulf of Oman to pre-war levels, and not to produce or acquire nuclear weapons. Tehran's foreign ministry said it was considering a plan for the presidents of the U.S. and Iran to sign the deal before a ceremony in Switzerland. Trump backed a G7 leaders' joint statement that welcomed the deal, but said a follow-on agreement was necessary to rein in Iran's ballistic missile program, an issue not directly addressed in the memorandum of understanding. They have to have some because other people have some. You got to have some, Trump said. Oh, how eloquent. What am I going to do? Am I going to let Saudi Arabia have missiles but they can't have them, he added, referring to previous discussions with advisors on Iran's missile arsenal. France's president, Emmanuel Macron, called it a very good deal, adding that U.S. allies in the G7 support it because it's an agreement that puts a stop to a situation of great instability that had terrible consequences for our economies. But the G7 proposal for further talks involving European leaders about Iran's ballistic missiles and support for proxy forces is certain to be rejected by Iran. Tehran has been negotiating exclusively with the U.S. and regards Europe as largely irrelevant. Iran is also likely to reject France and Britain's plan for a task force to escort ships through the strait, a proposal endorsed in the G7 leaders' statement. The G7 leaders said the agreement provided a historic opportunity to prevent Iran from acquiring any nuclear weapon and tackling the threats related to its regional and ballistic activities. We support and are ready to contribute to its implementation. Reaffirming the right of transit passage without restrictions or tolls as a bedrock of international trade, the leaders said the multinational independent and defensive initiative led by France and the UK can play an important role to facilitate the resumption of maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump also sounded a conciliatory note on returning frozen assets to Iran, a stipulation of the Obama administration's Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that he had attacked in 2015. We have taken a lot of their money, Trump told reporters. It's not our money, it's their money, and we froze it at a certain point in time. I guess we're going to have to give it back. And if we didn't give it back, nobody would ever invest in the dollar again. Trump claimed the price of a barrel of oil had fallen to $72. Brent crude dipped below $80 on Tuesday and would soon fall below the level it had been before the war. So that just catches you up. What's going on? What happened in all this time? What this, peace really looks like? What we gave up? to Iran, what our relationship is right now. All right. I think I'm going to do quick update on Vance Boelter and then end with Ghana and reparations, which I think is one of the most interesting stories of the week that really was not widely discussed very many places, probably because the U.S. was like, no, thanks. Okay. So obviously we're coming up on like, or we just came up on the 1 year anniversary of like Melissa Hortman assassination. And there's been an update in the assassin. So this is from nprnews.org, not to be confused with NPR. This is a local thing. And this is Boelter pleads guilty in lawmaker attacks, agrees to 2 life sentences. Vance Boelter pleaded guilty Thursday to murder, stalking, and firearms crimes in connection with the killings of former Minnesota DFL House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, as well as the attack on DFL State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette and their daughter Hope a year ago Sunday. Boelter's plea agreement calls for him to serve 2 consecutive life sentences plus 40 years in exchange for prosecutors' pledge not to seek the death penalty. The Justice Department said it would not seek the death penalty for Boelter, 58. Officials are expected to speak to reporters later this morning. A request for the Thursday hearing, filed Wednesday, notes that acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche directed prosecutors not to seek the death penalty against Boelter in accordance with the terms delineated in a proposed plea agreement. According to court documents, Boelter disguised himself as a police officer and killed the Hortmans at their Brooklyn Park home early in the morning on June 14th, 2025, about 90 minutes after attacking the Hoffmans at their home in Champlin. A federal grand jury returned a 6-count indictment in July, charging Boelter with stalking, murder with a firearm, and 2 other firearms-related crimes. Boelter also faces state charges of first-degree premeditated murder, which carry a mandatory sentence of life in prison without the possibility of release. So there we go on that. Just a little update. And I wanted to just, remind you of those deaths because, that was definitely one of the top stories, in my opinion, of 2025. And I feel like, as usual, how soon we forget, right? All right. So let's wrap the show up with this, this very interesting Ghana article. And we'll talk a little bit about reparations, baby. I know that's what you guys were yearning. You're like, what's an easy way to close the show? A little chat about reparations. This is from The Guardian. I usually don't use The Guardian a ton, but The Guardian had some good reporting this week. So Ghana to advance reparatory justice at first major gathering since landmark UN resolution. This is from today by Carlos Maruthi out of Nairobi. Heads of state and participants from more than 80 countries at 3-day event in Accra to pursue actionable commitments to reconciliation and restitution. Oh, damn it. One second. I got through the paywall and now I have to go back through this paywall. Oh, wait. Enter your email. 1 second.
I literally just hit the X button and it went away.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I did enter my email. I did all this before the show started, so I wouldn't have these problems. Perfect. Okay. Ghana is hosting a conference to advance the continent's push for reparatory justice after the adoption of the landmark United Nations resolution declaring the trafficking of enslaved Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. Heads of state and government, ministers, civil society representatives, historians, researchers, and legal experts representing more than 80 countries are converging in the capital, Accra, for the 3-day event Build Next Steps, which starts on Wednesday. It is the first major gathering on the issue since the resolution was adopted. The conference will feature an event on June 19th at Osu Castle, a 17th century fortress in the capital built by the Danish that served as a hub for the transatlantic slave trade to honor Juneteenth, which marks the end of slavery in the U.S. Expected speakers include Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados and Presidents John Mahama, Joseph Boakai Sr., Netumbo Nandi Nwada, and Bassirou Diomaye Faye of Ghana, Liberia, Namibia, and Senegal, respectively. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, will give a video address. Participants are engaging in dialogue around 5 objectives, including formulating a framework to advance the resolution's objectives globally and establishing global panels on reparatory justice and restitution to transform political momentum into a common, concrete institutional commitment for reparatory justice, organizers say. The conference comes nearly 3 months after the UN General Assembly voted to adopt a proposal by Ghana on behalf of AU member states to recognize the trafficking of enslaved Africans and the racialized chattel enslavement of people from the continent as the gravest crime against humanity. A total of 123 states voted. You're going to love this next part, Mike, where you see who didn't vote for it. A total of 123 states voted in favor of the proposal, while 3, the U.S., Israel, and Argentina, voted against it, and 52, including the UK and all EU member states, abstained.
That is interesting, right?
Mhm.
And it's, I know you say I like to bang the Israel drum a lot, but just a few years ago, there was a UN proposal that said food should be a human right. At
I
the
know you love
time,
this. This is your favorite fact.
the only two to oppose that were Israel and the United States. So it's like Argentina under Malay seems to have joined this, like that's just worth noting, right? Like if only 2 people were voting against something that everyone else in the world seemed to agree upon, and this one where most of the world seems to agree upon it and 3 people are saying hardline no, it's just, like it's interesting to me that like now a 3rd member has been added to that cabal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, there's also just abstaining, which is like the pussy way out.
Sure, but it's like, look, at the end of the day, if you're making the case that like I have no dog in this fight, it's not for me to say.
I
You know what I
guess.
mean?
Yeah.
Like that is what it is. I can't shame you for that one, but coming out and saying absolutely not. It is interesting to me that like, I would have assumed Argentina would have fallen in league with the rest of the world 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, it is interesting. I was like, oh, well, we have an outlier here. The transatlantic slave trade lasted about 400 years, from the early 16th century to the late 19th century. Many previous initiatives by African countries to redress decades of injustices, such as the forced enslavement of their people, had been largely fragmented. The resolution marked a watershed moment for the continent's campaign for reparative justice after efforts including the Abjua Proclamation of 1993 that demanded reparations for colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade and helped lay the groundwork for the campaign. Ghana says, in its concept note for the conference, this resolution represents a fundamental departure from the international community's response to this transatlantic slave trade, replacing commemorative gestures with the pursuit of historical truth and dialogue. Love that. Aimed at reconciliation and justice. Because that's the other thing. It's not just about justice. It's about like, if we ever like want to undo racism, like you gotta actually stop doing more than just fucking gestures. So I kind of really love this. The decision recognizes that the legacies of enslavement continue today. Certainly, see the cops. And calls for UN member states to have inclusive, good faith dialogue on reparatory justice and prompt and unhindered restitution of cultural and other properties that are of value to their countries of origin. The Accra Conference seeks to expand on the UN success by deliberating on mechanisms to turn the resolution's potential into actionable commitments. The decision has had some knock-on effects. Last month, Macron called for France to address its role in the enslavement of Africans, notably using the term reparations, which previous French heads of state have avoided. Also, last month, Pope Leo made a historic apology for the Vatican's role in legitimizing slavery and for its delay in condemning the practice. Kira Tui Osei, the head of programs at the Economic, Social, and Cultural Council, the AU's civil society policy organ, said that the global discourse on reparatory justice was gathering momentum and at its most promising, adding that the conference offered an opportunity to leverage this particular moment. There is this slow but really substantive, you know what I'm saying, movement towards some sort of global reckoning on this issue, he said. This conference is really going to allow Africa to ensure that it has the structures that would be necessary and the political will that we've seen to be properly leveraged and channeled to ensure that we are able to best give practical meaning to this particular point in time. The conference has representatives from outside Africa, the community of Latin America, and Caribbean states, the CARICORN Reparations Commission, the Congressional Black Caucus, and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Liliane Mbuyiye, the co-founder and executive director of African Futures Lab, a nonprofit that works to raise awareness of racial injustices, said the event presented an opportunity for the reparative justice movement to become a broader coalition involving other countries outside Africa and the Caribbean, another region with a growing reparations movement. This would significantly accelerate the reparations agenda, especially if other international institutions that have previously been hesitant to engage with the issue begin to do so, she added. I just thought that was really cool. I really didn't see that being talked about a lot, but it was like an article that I found. I always try to look for, both things that are widely talked about and things that I think are super interesting that I only see covered like one place. And that was the case with that article. So that is our show for today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you. Have fun and be safe if you're attending the Knicks parade tomorrow. Maybe I'll see you there. Say hi. I might be half asleep, but I'll be full of that great Knicks energy. And of course, save the date again for Sunday, October 25th in Los Angeles at the Comedy Store. Michael, what do you have to promote?
July 23rd, the Armored League is back at our New York home, Melrose Ballroom. We got the big boys fighting. They're going to be, I think, 215 to 245. A lot of masks before they even put on the armor. So head on over to thearmoredleague.com. Get your tickets today. And this Thursday, if you're watching this live, I got an anxiety attack at New York Comedy Club, East 4th Street. Come on by.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Make sure no matter how you listen to the show that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Those numbers really help people do look at them. Alfred wants to eat dinner very badly, but he says, thank you so much for listening. If you want to send me an email, it's withoutacountrypodcast@gmail.com. And of course, if you want to help support the show, it's patreon.com/withoutacountry. And you can support the show and pay everyone on here and get through these paywalls for as little as $6 a month. It's not really for profit. It's just to keep the show running without creating a financial deficit. So I appreciate you guys so much. Keep critically thinking, keep sending me interesting stories, keep being active in your neighborhoods, your states, and your country. I appreciate you. Bye.
Running from the man, yeah, the madman's coming, yeah, the man's gunning for me tonight. I spent the last week running from the heat, but the beat's coming alive.